Listen to me carefully. There are moments when heaven grows quiet, not because God has nothing to say, but because what God is about to say will shake the ground beneath your feet. And today, this is that moment. God is speaking with urgency, with authority, with divine resolve, and the message is clear. Pack your bags, it's time to go. Not because you are running away, but because you are being sent forward. Not because you have failed, but because you have outgrown where you are. Not because the season defeated you, but because the season has finished its assignment in your life. God does not move people randomly. When God says go, it is never reckless, never careless, never late. It is calculated, intentional, and filled with purpose. Some of you have felt restless for a long time. You couldn't explain it. But the place that once felt comfortable now feels tight. The conversations that once energized you now drain you. The routines that once brought peace now feel empty. You thought something was wrong with you, but nothing is wrong. God is shifting you. God is disturbing your comfort, because comfort can become a cage. God is stirring your spirit, because stagnation is dangerous for destiny. When God says, pack your bags, it means the grace that sustained you here will not sustain you there. A new grace is waiting, but you cannot access it if you refuse to move. God never calls you forward without first calling you out of old thinking, out of familiar limitations, out of environments that can no longer support the weight of who you are becoming. Some places are not sinful, they are simply small. Some people are not evil, they are simply assigned to a previous chapter. God is not angry with where you are, but God is intentional about where you are going. Staying too long in one season can cause you to confuse familiarity with faithfulness. God did not create you to camp forever. God created you to journey, to advance, to grow from glory to glory. You see, God speaks movement into the lives of those God trusts. God does not move people who refuse responsibility. God does not move people who avoid obedience. When God says, pack your bags, it is because God has already prepared the next place. God never sends without supply. God never instructs without provision. God never calls you forward without going ahead of you. Even when you don't see the road clearly, God has already walked it. Even when you don't understand the timing, God has already secured the outcome. There are doors you have been praying would open, but God says the door will only open when you leave the room you are in. You keep asking God to change the environment, but God is saying, you are the one who must change environments. Some blessings are location sensitive. Some breakthroughs are waiting for your obedience. Some answers will not manifest where you are standing now. God is saying, pack your bags, because the next miracle is not behind you, it is ahead of you. Fear rises when movement is required. Doubt becomes loud when certainty is removed. But God does not speak from fear, and God does not lead through confusion. The voice telling you to stay stuck is not God. The voice telling you to settle is not God. The voice telling you to delay obedience is not God. God's voice is firm, clear, and full of authority. God does not negotiate with hesitation. God calls, and those who trust God move. Some of you are holding on because you invested years there. You labored there. You sacrificed there. You bled there. And God says, I saw every tear. I counted every sacrifice, and nothing was wasted. But just because God used the place does not mean God intends for you to remain there. The seed does not stay in the ground forever. If it did, it would rot instead of multiply. God says it is time to rise, time to emerge, time to step into what has been prepared. God knows you are afraid of the unknown, but God also knows the danger of staying known. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar promise, but safety was never your calling. Obedience was, faith was, trust was. God is not asking you to understand the whole journey. God is asking you to trust the one who directs it. When God says go, your responsibility is not to question the distance, but to take the step. There is a new assignment waiting for you, a new level of impact, a new realm of influence, but it requires movement. God does not upgrade people who refuse transition. Elevation demands separation. Growth demands release. Expansion demands departure. You cannot carry everything with you. Some things must be left behind. Old mindsets, old fears, old identities that no longer reflect who God has called you to be. God is saying, pack your bags, because delay is disobedience in disguise. You have prayed long enough. You have prepared long enough. You have waited long enough. This is not a season of contemplation. It is a season of action. God's instruction is not complicated. It is costly, but it is clear. And what it costs you now will reward you later. Some of you are worried about who will understand your decision. Not everyone needs to understand obedience. Not everyone is invited into your calling. Not everyone can walk with you into the next season. God did not consult people when shaping your destiny, and God does not need their approval now. When God says go, human opinion becomes secondary. Divine direction becomes final. There are moments when God disrupts stability to introduce purpose. You thought stability was the goal, but purpose is higher. Stability keeps things as they are. Purpose changes everything. God is not interested in preserving your comfort if it costs your calling. God is more committed to your future than to your feelings. And that is love. God is not cruel. God is precise. Every step God asks you to take aligns with a bigger picture you cannot yet see. What feels like loss is often positioning. What feels like ending is often alignment. What feels like abandonment is often divine redirection. God closes doors not to punish you, but to protect you from staying where you no longer belong. You may not feel ready, but readiness is not a feeling, it is a decision. Obedience often precedes confidence. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is movement in spite of fear. God did not promise you would feel brave. God promised to be faithful. And God's faithfulness does not fail based on your emotions. When God says pack your bags, it also means God is changing your vision. You will see differently. You will think differently. You will pray differently. Your appetite will change. Your tolerance for mediocrity will decrease. You will no longer be satisfied with survival when God has promised abundance. You will no longer accept limitation when God has spoken expansion. Some of you have been asking God for confirmation, but the instruction has already been given. Confirmation follows obedience, not the other way around. When you move, clarity increases. When you step, the path reveals itself. God does not illuminate the entire road at once. God gives light for the next step because that requires trust. God is saying, go because where you are has done all it can do for you. The lessons have been learned. The strength has been built. The endurance has been tested. Now it is time to apply what you gained. Staying would dishonor what God developed in you. Movement honors growth. You are not leaving empty-handed. You are carrying wisdom, resilience, discernment, and favor. What you learned there will serve you here. What you endured there prepared you for this. God never wastes seasons. Even painful ones become preparation in God's hands. Some of you fear failure in the next place, but failure is not the enemy. Disobedience is. God can redeem mistakes, but God does not endorse refusal. When you move with God, even setbacks serve purpose. Even delays bring insight. Even challenges strengthen capacity. God is saying, pack your bags because the environment must match the assignment. Eagles do not thrive in cages. Seeds do not grow on stone. Calling requires context, and God is changing your context so your calling can breathe. There is a divine urgency in this moment, not panic but purpose. Not pressure, but precision. God's timing is not emotional, it is exact. Missing this moment could cost years. Obedience now saves regret later. You are not too late. You are right on time. God has been aligning people, resources, and opportunities behind the scenes. What feels sudden to you has been planned in heaven. When you arrive, things will make sense quickly because preparation has already taken place. God is not asking you to eat blindly. God is asking you to walk faithfully, step by step, day by day, trusting that the same God who sustained you before will establish you again. God does not abandon those God sends. Some of you will have to walk away from applause to walk into assignment. You will trade familiarity for faith, predictability for promise, but what you gain will far outweigh what you leave behind. God is calling you higher, and higher always requires letting go of lower ground. You cannot climb while holding on to what weighs you down. Release is not lost when God is involved. It is exchange. This is not a demotion. It is a divine repositioning. God is moving you from being overlooked to being entrusted, from being hidden to being revealed, from preparation to manifestation. Pack your bags means prepare your heart, prepare your mind, prepare your obedience. Do not move bitter. Do not move afraid. Move thankful, move trusting, move aware that God's hand is guiding every step. What awaits you will demand more faith, but it will also produce more fruit, more responsibility, but also more reward. God increases capacity before God increases impact. You are not being sent alone. God goes with you. God surrounds you. God sustains you. Even when people fall away, God remains constant. This is a defining moment. Future generations connected to your obedience will benefit from this decision. What you do now echoes beyond you. God is not just thinking about you, but about what will come through you. Pack your bags because delay ends today. Hesitation ends today. Fear loses its grip today. Obedience begins now. God has spoken. The instruction is clear. The moment is now. The movement has begun. And understand this deeply. When God commands movement, it is not merely physical. God is calling your inner world to relocate. Your faith must move before your feet do. Your mindset must move before your circumstances shift. Some of you are still standing in the new place physically, but mentally you're unpacking old fears, old disappointments, old limits. God says you cannot carry yesterday's thinking into tomorrow's assignment. The journey God has ordained requires a renewed vision, a sanctified imagination, a disciplined heart that refuses to think small when God has spoken large. God is not interested in partial obedience. Half-packed bags delay destiny. You cannot say yes with your lips while your heart is still anchored to what God has already released. God sees divided loyalty as hesitation, and hesitation weakens momentum. When God speaks, heaven expects alignment. When God directs, heaven responds to movement. The speed of fulfillment is often connected to the speed of obedience. Some of you have been asking why. Resistance increased the moment you decided to move. Why opposition intensified the moment you chose obedience. That is not coincidence. Resistance often confirms direction. Darkness reacts when light advances. When God orders movement, obstacles will test your resolve, not because God is uncertain, but because your faith must mature. Every resistance you overcome builds authority within you. God is shaping not only your destination, but your capacity to stand there. God knows you feel unqualified, but God never calls the qualified. God qualifies the called. The feeling of inadequacy is not a sign to stop. It is evidence that the assignment is bigger than your own strength. God intentionally sends you where dependence becomes necessary. Self-reliance cannot survive where God is taking you. Trust must become your language. Surrender must become your posture. Some of you are grieving what you must leave behind. God understands that grief. God does not dismiss your emotions. But God also knows that nostalgia can become an idol if you allow it to anchor you to a finished season. Honor the past, but do not live there. Appreciate what was, but do not confuse memory with mandate. God lives in the present movement, not in yesterday's comfort. God is also saying that packing your bags means letting go of false timelines. You thought it would happen sooner. You thought it would look different. You thought certain people would come with you. God is not obligated to follow your expectations. God follows purpose, and purpose is often revealed progressively, not all at once. Trusting God means allowing God to unfold the plan without demanding control. There are divine connections waiting ahead that cannot find you where you are now. Alignment requires positioning. God connects destiny to obedience, not convenience. Some doors will only recognize you when you arrive in the right place, at the right time, with the right heart. Staying behind delays encounters that could shift your entire future. God is reminding you that provision follows assignment. Do not fear lack. Where God sends, God supplies. Where God leads, God sustains. Anxiety about resources reveals where trust still needs to grow. God is not limited by what you see. God operates beyond visible systems. Obedience activates provision you cannot calculate. Some of you are afraid of being misunderstood. Let them misunderstand. God's approval outweighs human interpretation. History has never been changed by people who waited to be understood. Destiny often requires isolation before impact. God sometimes removes familiar voices so you can hear divine instruction without interference. God is also pruning your identity. You are no longer who you used to be, but you are not yet fully who you will become. This in-between space feels uncomfortable because growth stretches identity. But do not retreat. God is expanding you internally to match what is coming externally. What feels heavy now will feel natural later. When God says pack your bags, it also means prepare for responsibility. Increase is coming, but increase demands stewardship. Influence is coming, but influence demands integrity. Expansion is coming, but expansion demands discipline. God is not elevating you to impress others, but to establish purpose through you. Some of you must stop asking for signs and start becoming one. Your obedience is the evidence. Your movement is the testimony. When you trust God visibly, others learn how to trust God practically. Your life becomes a message without words. God is breaking the illusion that security comes from predictability. True security comes from alignment. You are safer in uncertainty with God than in certainty without obedience. Do not mistake routine for refuge. God is your refuge, not the place you are leaving. There will be moments when you look back and wonder if you heard God correctly. In those moments, return to what you know, not what you feel. God's word does not fluctuate with emotion. Feelings shift, but divine. Instruction remains steady. Anchor yourself in what God spoke, not in what circumstances suggest. God is developing endurance in you because the next season will require consistency, not bursts of faith. Sustained obedience produces lasting fruit. Emotional excitement fades, but disciplined trust carries you forward. God is building roots before God shows fruit. Some of you will arrive in the new place quietly, unnoticed, unseen. Do not be discouraged. God often starts new chapters in hiddenness. Hidden preparation protects public purpose. What grows in secret gains strength to stand in the open. God is also reminding you that humility must travel with you. New places can tempt pride. New favor can distort focus. Stay grounded. Remember who brought you. Remember who sustains you. God lifts those who remain surrendered. Pack your bags also means forgive before you go. Unforgiveness weighs you down. Bitterness leaks into new seasons and contaminates fresh beginnings. Release what hurts you so it does not follow you. God cannot feel hands that are clenched around old pain. Some of you are waiting for peace before moving, but peace often comes after movement. The step creates the stillness. Obedience calms the storm inside. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Move with imperfect courage and complete trust. God is shaping your legacy, not just your next step. Decisions made now ripple forward. Generations you may never meet will benefit from your obedience today. This is bigger than comfort. This is bigger than preference. This is destiny unfolding. And as you move, remember this: God is not testing you to fail. God is trusting you to grow. The call to pack your bags is not a threat. It is an invitation into more faith, more purpose, more alignment with divine intention. Heaven is watching your response, not with judgment, but with expectation. God has already gone ahead. God has already prepared the ground. God has already secured the outcome. All that remains is movement. And let this settle in your spirit. Movement with God is never random wandering. It is ordered progression. God does not uproot without replanting. God does not remove without replacing. God does not empty without intending to fill. When God says pack your bags, it is because the soil beneath you has completed its assignment. Staying longer would no longer produce fruit. It would only preserve familiarity. God is too intentional to let you linger where growth has plateaued. Some of you are wrestling internally because obedience feels costly right now. It feels like you are letting go of control, certainty, and security all at once. But God reminds you that control is an illusion. Security rooted in anything other than God is fragile. Certainty outside of divine direction is temporary. What you are releasing is not safety, it is limitation disguised as comfort. God is calling you into a deeper trust that is not based on what you can predict, but on who God is. God is also revealing that transition exposes true faith. Anyone can praise God when settled. Anyone can trust God when things are predictable. But faith is refined in motion. Faith is proven when you step forward without seeing the entire picture. God allows uncertainty not to confuse you, but to purify your reliance. When there is nothing else to hold on to, trust becomes sincere. Some of you are carrying guilt for wanting more, thinking that desiring change means ingratitude. But growth does not dishonor gratitude. God is not offended by your hunger for expansion. God placed that hunger within you. Contentment does not mean stagnation. It means peace in obedience, even while moving forward. You can be thankful for where you have been and still obedient to where God is sending you. God is also teaching you that obedience often looks unreasonable to logic. Logic asks for guarantees. God asks for trust. Logic demands evidence. God demands faith. If God waited for everything to make sense before calling you to move, faith would be unnecessary. What makes this journey sacred is not clarity, but surrender. There are unseen battles happening as you prepare to move. Doubt whispers, fear exaggerates, old voices resurface. But God is strengthening your discernment so you can recognize which voices align with divine truth and which ones are rooted in insecurity. Not every thought deserves agreement. Not every emotion deserves authority. God's word remains the highest voice even when others grow loud. God is reminding you that timing matters as much as direction. Moving too early creates strain. Moving too late creates regret. This moment is precise. Heaven's clock is aligned. What God is doing now could not have been done before. You were not ready then, but you are ready now. even if you don't feel it. Readiness in God's eyes is obedience, not confidence. Some of you are concerned about losing identity in the transition. God says you will not lose yourself, you will discover yourself. Old labels will fall off. Old limitations will break. You will realize that much of who you thought you were was shaped by environment, not calling. God is removing you from spaces that defined you incorrectly so you can step into truth without distortion. God is also warning you not to romanticize what you are leaving. The mind has a way of editing memories when fear of the future rises. You forget the prayers you cried there. You forget the pressure you endured there. You forget the growth that came through struggle. Do not allow selective memory to sabotage divine movement. God ended that chapter for a reason. As you move, God is refining your obedience to be immediate, not delayed. Delayed obedience trains the heart to negotiate with fear. Immediate obedience strengthens trust. Every time you respond quickly, your spirit becomes more sensitive to divine instruction. God wants you to move without constant resistance, because resistance exhausts faith. God is also preparing you for seasons where affirmation will be scarce. Not every step will be applauded, not every decision will be celebrated, but approval from people was never the source of your calling. God's voice initiated this journey, and God's presence will sustain it. Learn to be anchored internally, not externally. Some of you will face moments where progress feels slow. Do not equate slowness with failure. God values depth over speed. Strong foundations take time. God is not rushing the process because God is invested in longevity. What lasts is built carefully. God is also separating you from dependence on signs. Signs are helpful, but faith matures when obedience does not require constant reassurance. God wants you to trust divine character, not chase confirmation endlessly. When you know who God is, you can move even when signs are quiet. As you continue forward, God will confront areas of pride disguised as self-protection. Walls you built to survive may now block connection. Defense mechanisms that once kept you safe may now limit intimacy with God. Packing your bags also means unpacking unhealthy patterns. Growth demands vulnerability. God is reshaping how you view failure. Failure is no longer something to fear, but something to learn from. God redeems missteps when the heart remains surrendered. What matters is not perfection, but posture. A humble heart remains teachable, even in unfamiliar territory. Some of you are stepping into places where you will be tested differently. Old strategies will no longer work. Old strengths will feel insufficient. This is intentional. God is expanding your reliance beyond skill into faith. Skill can take you far, but faith carries you through what skill cannot manage. God is also aligning your pace with divine rhythm. You will no longer rush to prove yourself. You will move with purpose, not pressure. God's timing frees you from comparison. What God is building in you is unique. Comparing journeys only breeds impatience. As you walk, God will give you discernment about what to embrace and what to avoid. Not everything new is meant for you. Not every opportunity is aligned. Movement requires wisdom. God will guide you step by step if you remain attentive. God is reminding you that obedience does not eliminate struggle, but it gives struggle meaning. Pain without purpose feels unbearable. Pain with purpose refines character. God does not waste hardship, God transforms it. Some of you are entering a season where prayer will become less about asking and more about listening. Direction will matter more than desire. Silence will shape you as much as words. God speaks clearly to those who are willing to obey quietly. And hear this clearly, you are not being uprooted to be lost. You are being repositioned to be effective. God is strategic with lives. Nothing about this shift is accidental. What feels unsettling now will become alignment later. God is calling you to trust that divine intention outweighs personal preference. Preference is comfortable, but purpose is eternal. When you choose purpose, comfort eventually follows in deeper, truer ways. This journey will teach you that God's faithfulness is not tied to location, status, or familiarity. God remains constant through every transition. When everything else changes, God does not. So keep moving, keep trusting, keep listening. The instruction stands. The direction is clear. The path unfolds as you walk. God is leading, and obedience is carrying you forward. And now God is drawing your attention to something deeper. Movement with God is not only about where you are going, but about who you are becoming on the way. Every step forward exposes layers within you that comfort never touched. Transition reveals motives, intentions, loyalties. God allows this exposure not to shame you, but to purify you. What is revealed can be healed. What is confronted can be transformed. God uses movement as a mirror so your inner life can align with your calling. God is also reminding you that obedience reshapes authority. When you obey in uncertainty, your spiritual authority increases. Authority is not loudness. Authority is alignment. And heaven sees you move. Without full visibility, trust is deposited into your spirit. That trust becomes weight. That weight becomes influence. People listen differently to those who have walked with God through the unseen. Some of you have been struggling with the fear of irrelevance. You wonder if leaving will cause you to be forgotten. God says relevance is not maintained by staying visible, but by staying obedient. God knows how to reintroduce you at the right moment. Silent seasons do not erase destiny, they strengthen it. When God brings you forward again, it will be with clarity and impact. God is also confronting the idea that rest and movement are opposites. They are not. True rest comes from obedience, not inactivity. Disobedience exhausts the soul. Alignment restores it. You will find that even in transition, there is a strange peace when your steps match divine direction. Chaos surrounds disobedience. Peace follows surrender. Some of you are learning that faith is not the absence of questions, but the refusal to let questions paralyze you. God is not threatened by your questions, but God will not allow questions to replace obedience. Ask, but move. Wonder, but trust. Seek understanding, but do not delay alignment. God honors seekers who still step forward. God is also dismantling the fear of starting over. You are not starting over, you are building forward. Experience carries value. Wisdom compounds. What you learned before becomes leverage now. God does not reset progress, God redirects it. Nothing you gained is lost. Everything will be used. As you move, God will sharpen your discernment about timing. Not every door is meant to be forced. Some doors are and only when patience matures. Waiting is not disobedience when God instructs it. Stillness can be obedience too. The key is listening. Movement without direction creates exhaustion. Movement with God creates momentum. God is teaching you how to release outcomes. Control clings to results. Faith clings to instruction. When you stop micromanaging outcomes, your spirit breathes. God does not require you to manage the future. God requires you to follow today's direction. Tomorrow unfolds when today is obeyed. Some of you are experiencing emotional turbulence because old wounds are resurfacing. Transition often stirs unresolved pain. God allows this not to overwhelm you, but to heal you fully before the next level. What was buried but never healed cannot remain hidden forever. God heals completely, not partially. God is also refining your speech. Complaints weaken perception. Gratitude strengthens vision. Speak life over where you are going, even when uncertainty remains. Words shape atmosphere. When your words align with trust, your environment responds to faith. There will be moments when the new place feels unfamiliar and unwelcoming. Do not mistake unfamiliarity for rejection. Every new territory requires adjustment. God does not promise instant comfort, but God promises faithful presence. Presence sustains you until belonging forms. God is also reminding you that humility protects favor. As God elevates you, stay teachable, stay grateful. Stay aware that everything you carry was entrusted, not earned alone. Pride disconnects, gratitude grounds. God sustains those who remain low in heart, even when lifted in position. Some of you will need to redefine success. Success, S is not speed. Success is alignment. Success is obedience completed, regardless of applause. God measures differently than people. Faithfulness matters more than visibility. Integrity matters more than recognition. God is training you to discern between opportunity and assignment. Not every opportunity is yours. Assignment carries peace even when difficult. Opportunity can excite ego. Assignment fulfills purpose. God guides you toward what aligns, not just what attracts. As you continue forward, God will teach you to rely less on emotional motivation and more on disciplined trust. Motivation fluctuates. Trust remains. Discipline sustains. Obedience when emotions are silent. God builds stability through consistency, not intensity. God is also addressing your fear of being alone. Solitude is not abandonment. Sometimes God removes noise so instruction becomes clear. Alone seasons clarify purpose. God often speaks most clearly when distractions are minimal. Some of you are learning that obedience requires courage to disappoint others. You cannot obey God and please everyone. Someone will misunderstand. Someone will question. Someone will resist. But obedience was never a group decision. God spoke to you. God is also preparing you for moments when you will need to encourage yourself. External encouragement is helpful, but internal conviction is necessary. When voices are absent, conviction carries you. God builds inner strength so you are not dependent on constant reassurance. As you walk, God will open your eyes to subtle confirmations, not dramatic signs, but quiet alignments, conversations that confirm direction, timings that unfold precisely, peace that appears unexpectedly. These are reminders that God is present, even when the path feels uncertain. God is teaching you patience with yourself. Growth is not instant. Transformation takes time. Do not shame yourself for still learning. Obedience is a process. God walks patiently with those who remain willing. Some of you are entering a season where your influence will be tested by character. Visibility reveals integrity. God refines character before increasing exposure. What is unseen matters more than what is seen. God strengthens roots before widening branches. God is also reminding you that destiny unfolds progressively. Today's obedience prepares tomorrow's clarity. You are not meant to see everything now. You are meant to trust now. Vision expands as obedience deepens. As movement continues, God will remind you that your worth is not tied to productivity. You are valued because God created you, not because of what you accomplish. Obedience flows best from identity, not insecurity. God is shaping your perspective so you can see challenges as training, not punishment. Training builds strength. Punishment breeds fear. God trains those God intends to use greatly. And as you keep moving, let this anchor you. God is not surprised by your questions, your fears, or your hesitation. God knew all of it before calling you. The call remains because God believes in what obedience will produce in you. The instruction still stands. The movement continues. God remains ahead, beside, and with you, guiding each step forward. And now hear this as the final weight of what God has been declaring. This moment is not symbolic, it is decisive. Heaven is not waiting on another sign, another prayer, another delay. God has already spoken. The invitation has been extended, the direction has been clarified, and the grace to move has been released. What remains is your response. Destiny does not open to intention alone, it opens to obedience in motion. God is not calling you to understand everything, but God is calling you to trust completely. The future you are stepping into will not be sustained by what you know, but by who God is. When you reach moments where strength feels thin, God will be your strength. When clarity feels distant, God will be your guide. When courage feels small, God will be your confidence. You are not stepping into uncertainty alone, you are stepping into alignment with divine purpose. This transition will redefine you. You will look back one day and realize that what felt like loss was liberation, what felt like disruption was direction, what felt like ending was divine acceleration. God will use your obedience as evidence that trust is still alive in the earth. Your movement will speak louder than your words ever could. Let go without bitterness. Move without fear. Trust without reservation. God does not call lightly, and God does not lead carelessly. Every step you take in obedience places you exactly where you need to be, even when it doesn't feel that way yet. Faith is not proven by comfort, it is proven by movement. Pack your bags means prepare your heart for expansion. Prepare your mind for elevation. Prepare your spirit for responsibility. What awaits you will require more faith, but it will also reveal more of God's faithfulness than you have ever known. Do not look back longing for what God already released you from. Look forward with trust toward what God has already prepared. The path may unfold one step at a time, but every step is covered by divine intention. God has spoken. The season has shifted. The journey has begun.